Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. President Biden meets with one of his harshest critics on the Middle East. The conflict highlights the Democratic Party's deepening divide when it comes to Israel. Democrat Chuck Schumer says the Republican Party is trying to avoid the truth about January 6th, while the GOP says any probe should be objective and investigate the many riots across the country last year. A group of GOP lawmakers are pushing back on Pelosi's House rules, mandating masks for fully vaccinated members and other virus-related policies. Some of them showed up on the House floor without masks, accepting a fine to show support for the CDC's latest guidance. The New York Attorney General expands her investigation into the Trump Organization into a criminal probe. It's targeting financial statements from the group. The Israeli military has bombed several miles of terrorist tunnels where most of Hamas's rockets were reportedly launched. It comes as President Biden meets with one of his harshest critics on Israel. NTD's Jessica Beatty has more.
President Biden and Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib had a tense conversation Tuesday in Detroit, shortly before his speech at a Ford plant. Tlaib didn't say what it was about. Biden later complimented her.
I tell you what, Rashid, I want to say to you that I admire your intellect, I admire your passion, and I admire your concern for so many other people.
Tlaib is the only Palestinian American in Congress. Biden told her the White House will do whatever it can to make sure her family in the West Bank will be safe.
I pray that your grandmom and family are well. I promise you I'm going to do everything to see that they are on the West Bank.
Tlaib has been critical of the Biden administration's support of Israel in its recent conflict with the terrorist group Hamas. On Monday, she tweeted, "If you support a ceasefire, then get out of the way of the UN Security Council and join other countries in demanding it." She also demanded on MSNBC that Biden speak out against Israel in a very aggressive way. The recent conflict showcases the Democratic divide over the Jewish state. The old guard voices support for Israel and its right to defend itself from rocket attacks. But the party's progressive wing rejects that approach, saying the U.S. should protect Palestinians. A member of the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees says the goal should be Israel and Palestine living peacefully side by side.
Let's do a ceasefire. That's what will be a small step toward possibly getting us there. No more beating around the bush. I think the U.S. should stand strongly for a ceasefire.
Supporters of Palestine focus on how many civilians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Israeli Defense Forces, on the other hand, say Hamas uses civilians as human shields and turns civilian buildings into rocket launch sites, making them legitimate military targets. On Wednesday, it tweeted a video showing an Israeli pilot pausing an airstrike to give civilians time to evacuate. It's not clear when or if either side will back down. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressed the flare-up of violence between Israel and Palestine. He says the Biden administration reversed 3 key actions by the Trump administration and that the results are playing out in the current situation. Here are the details.
Israeli sovereignty in the West Bank.
Trump Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Tuesday listed 3 actions the Trump administration has done to establish stability in the Middle East. Those include making it clear from the get-go that Israel has a right to defend itself, acknowledging Iran as a terrorist regime and denying its nuclear program and terror campaign, and normalizing relations between the United Arab Emirates and Israel in the Abraham Accords.
The answer is the Biden administration undid or attempted to undo nearly every one of those by sitting in Vienna, handing the Iranians billions of dollars as the lucre to convince them to come back into this failed nuclear deal that had no chance of permanently stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon or a nuclear weapons program.
Pompeo is referring to when the Biden administration earlier this month unfroze $1 billion in Iranian assets for the country to use as humanitarian relief. That was during negotiations for the U.S. to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal. Pompeo addresses the different degree of initiative each of the 2 administrations had toward Israel.
And then the absence of the clear commitment early on that said, no, we're going to have conversations with you. Remember how long it took President Biden to just make the first phone call to Prime Minister Netanyahu? Those all sent signals. Those actions sent signals to the Middle East, to the Iranian terrorists that are sponsored by the regime in Iran that said this is a green light, and you see the results of this.
Pompeo went on to say the Chinese regime hates Trump officials so much because it was the first administration in 40 years to call it out. That includes sounding the alarm about the CCP's intellectual property theft and the genocide of the ethnic Uyghur minority in China's West. Pompeo says when the CCP sanctioned Trump officials for telling the truth about the regime's abuses, it was in effect extorting Biden officials. That's because he says the sanctions send a message to Biden officials that if they want to be able to be prosperous in business in the private sector after they leave office, they better be careful on how they treat China while they are in office. Kevin Hogan, NTD News. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer says Republicans are trying to avoid the truth about what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. He says that because Republicans are not supporting the commission to investigate it. But Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says while Democrats are looking to investigate the Capitol breach, they are ignoring other political violence, such as the riots in 2020. Here's more.
Senator Chuck Schumer said Tuesday he is going to put a commission to investigate the events on January 6th at the Capitol on the Senate floor for a vote.
Before I begin, I just want to say that I saw Leader McCarthy's 11th hour opposition on the January 6th commission. This shows how difficult it is to negotiate with Republicans.
The commission is similar to the investigation into the 9/11 terrorist attacks and would make recommendations to prevent another breach. But the GOP leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, does not support the commission. And the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he's putting the proposal on pause.
If it's going to go forward, it needs to be clearly balanced and not tilted one way or the other so we have an objective evaluation. So I think it's safe for you to report that we're undecided about the way forward at this point. We want to read the fine print, and if the majority leader puts it on the floor, we'll react accordingly.
McCarthy points out that Democrats are supporting a commission on the January 6th Capitol breach, but are ignoring political violence in the form of riots that struck American cities and at a Republican congressional baseball practice. McCarthy wants the panel to investigate other groups like Black Lives Matter, but Pelosi and a top Republican on the Homeland Security Committee rejected that approach. Pelosi says McCarthy made 3 requests to Democrats in the draft discussion of the proposal, but she says he still didn't support it. All this while former President Trump calls for the talks on the January 6th commission to end immediately. He urged Republicans to cease all discussion with Democrats about this bipartisan proposal. Trump referred to the Black Lives Matter riots in cities nationwide last year. He said Republicans in the House and Senate should not approve the Democrat trap of the January 6th commission. It is just more partisan unfairness, and unless the murders, riots, and fire bombings in Portland, Minneapolis, Seattle, Chicago, and New York are going to be studied, this discussion should be ended immediately. On Tuesday, the White House came out in support of the commission, and the House is expected to vote on it soon.
Some GOP politicians say it's time to return to normal in the House of Representatives. A group of them made a public display reinforcing the CDC's new guidance on masks.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and a group of her GOP House colleagues recently arrived on the House floor without masks, violating current House rules. Greene tweeted, "Masks are oppressive and nothing but a political tool. End the oppression." House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi says she has no immediate plans to change mask rules. But the latest CDC guidance says that fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks, inside or outside. The Capitol's attending physician Brian Monahan originally stated that vaccinated members no longer needed to wear masks, but later changed his mind. Now he says that the mask mandate will stay until all House members and staff get the vaccine. Another group of Republicans wrote to Pelosi asking her to bring lawmakers back to work in person. They want her to end virtual committee meetings and proxy voting. Representative Michelle Fischbach says it's safe for Democrats to come back to the House floor.
Madam Speaker, if the issue that the majority has with reopening is related to vaccinations, I understand the majority claims that their side is 100% vaccinated. And I would just say that if that is the case, science says that they have nothing to worry about coming to the House floor or being in public.
The letter sent to Pelosi and signed by the Republican House leadership says, "We have accomplished an incredible milestone in defeating the virus. Now we must serve as a model for our nation to restore, rebuild, renew, and resume America."
A candidate for the 2022 Georgia gubernatorial race calls for a full forensic audit of the 2022 general election in Georgia's Fulton and Chatham counties. Candace Taylor's request comes during the ongoing forensic audit in Maricopa County, Arizona. She announced her run for governor earlier this year and is currently an educator with the Appling County Board of Education. Many of the election fraud allegations in Georgia are aimed at Chatham and Fulton counties, which includes the city of Atlanta, but a number of election-related lawsuits have been turned down by the courts. Taylor said she requested an audit to multiple levels of Georgia officials and says that thousands of Georgia residents will do the same. A Michigan circuit court judge is throwing out a case related to an election audit in Antrim County. The plaintiff was seeking an audit of the election there. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Michigan's 13th Circuit Court Judge Kevin Elsenheimer dismissed an election-related case in his state on Tuesday.
That the plaintiff's claims are moot, as all requested relief has been granted, and therefore this court lacks jurisdiction to review moot claims. And with regard to item number 2, that plaintiff lacks standing to bring its claims into court, and item 3, that plaintiff has failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted.
Plaintiff William Bailey was seeking an independent audit of the 2020 election in Antrim County. He's a resident of the county and filed the lawsuit last year following the election. The judge ruled that the February audit by Antrim County clerks was sufficient under state law. He said, "There is no right either in the constitutional section or the statute for independent audit that Mr. Bailey seeks." A 2018 amendment to the Michigan Constitution allows voters to have the results of statewide elections audited in such a manner as prescribed by law to ensure the accuracy and integrity of elections. But a state law gives the Secretary of State the authority to decide how to conduct such audits. Bailey's lawyer, Matthew DePerno, tells the Epoch Times that he plans to appeal the decision. He thinks the judge is wrong on his interpretation of the Michigan Constitution. Antrim County falsely reported a win for the then Democratic nominee Joe Biden on election night. A hand recount in December confirmed that then President Trump actually won by a wide margin. Allison Lee, NTD News.
The New York Attorney General's office is expanding a probe into the Trump Organization into a criminal investigation. The probe began in 2019 after Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen testified to Congress. Attorney General Letitia James has been investigating allegations that former President Trump and the Trump Organization improperly manipulated the value of assets on annual financial statements. The claims say the purpose was to secure loans and obtain tax benefits. James's investigators are working with the Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. He investigated Trump and his company for 2 years in a criminal capacity. Both James and Vance are Democrats. In previous statements, the Trump Organization denied allegations of wrongdoing and said it acted in good faith during the probe. Congresswoman Val Demings from Florida plans to run for the Senate. Her bid would challenge Republican Marco Rubio for his seat. Demings is a Democrat and former police chief and was one of the House managers who represented a case for Trump's first impeachment. 64-year-old Demings was first elected to the House in 2016. She was endorsed by the Collective PAC. The organization helped push former Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum to prominence, despite his loss to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Florida is considered a battleground state for the 2022 election. Demings is unlikely to be the only Democratic candidate and will face competition from 3 others who vary in political outlook and background. Coming up, New York returns to life after a year of strict lockdowns and other pandemic restrictions. People start to ditch their masks and businesses open to full capacity. And Miss Universe visits the top of the Empire State Building to kick off her stay in New York City. She won her new title this past weekend. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News. Customs and Border Protection in Chicago says it recently stopped several shipments with $685,000 worth of counterfeit currencies from China. The shipments arrived at Chicago's International Mail Facility. The fake currencies came in the form of $5, $10, $20, $50, and $100 bills. But the fake money seized by agents in Chicago was hardly an isolated incident. On April 23rd, CBP officers in the city said they seized 281 shipments with counterfeit bills and coins at the same facility. 95% of these shipments came from China. China remains the top source of fake goods entering the U.S. market. The assistant area port director for Chicago said that counterfeiting is often used to finance illegal activities like human trafficking, drugs, and terrorism. A new candidate is throwing his hat in the race for New York governor. Andrew Giuliani, the son of former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, announced his run for governor on Tuesday.
Andrew Giuliani is running for New York governor to challenge third-term incumbent Andrew Cuomo.
To bring New York back.
Giuliani, who has never run for public office before, is up against several other Republicans who have already declared their candidacies. In 2017, Giuliani was appointed associate director in the Office of Public Liaison by former President Trump. We spoke to the younger Giuliani in April about his potential run for governor.
And if I am elected governor, what I could tell you is all those U-Haul trucks that are down in Florida right now, we're going to U-turn them back up to New York, and we're going to create jobs, and we're going to create economic opportunity in New York again and make it the center of the world as it should be.
Giuliani told the New York Post he's a politician out of the womb. It's in his DNA. He also believes there's a real chance to win with a wounded Democratic candidate, whether that be Cuomo, Attorney General Letitia James, or someone else. The announcement comes amid a series of controversies for Governor Andrew Cuomo. He's got multiple allegations of sexual harassment against him, and he's been criticized for his handling of the pandemic, particularly nursing home deaths. The 2022 gubernatorial elections will be held on November 8th. Christina Kim, NTD News.
After a bleak year of lockdowns and quarantine, New York City is starting to lessen restrictions. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
New York City is coming back to life. A year ago, streets there were empty. Now, bands play in the parks, and many people have already ditched their masks outside. After more than a year of some of the country's strictest pandemic restrictions, New York will adopt the recent CDC guidelines starting Wednesday. Vaccinated people will no longer have to wear masks or social distance.
I definitely think life is back. Compared to Colombia, we've experienced full lockdown right now, so when I share them pictures, hanging out, being in the streets, being able to not wear a mask after taking the second dose of the vaccine, I think that's a little bit mind-blowing for my friends in Colombia, so I think it's very lively and the city is going back to normal life.
New York's restaurants were hit incredibly hard by the virus restrictions. Now, many are rescinding mask requirements for vaccinated customers.
When the guests come through the door, it's going to be the first question that we ask: are you guys vaccinated? Can you just show us a quick bit of proof? And then essentially, if you guys are happy enough to take your mask off, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm going to have all of my staff who have been vaccinated make sure that they show up with their passport on hand. And if these guys are comfortable to not wear their mask during work, then that's great with me too.
At the chess forum, owner Ahmad Chakan said he will probably continue to enforce a mask policy until the area reaches herd immunity.
Last night, I have to say, the first time in over a year and a half, we made a sale around 10 p.m. A tourist from Memphis. That's the first time ever we sell something that late. We usually stay till midnight. Now we close by 7 or so, between 7 and 8. But last night we stayed a little bit longer.
New York State is still urging people who are unvaccinated and immunocompromised to continue to wear masks and social distance. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Newly crowned Miss Universe visits the top of the Empire State Building after her win on Sunday. She posed for photos and said she hopes to find vegan Mexican food in New York City.
I just moved to New York City yesterday night. I'm super excited about that. I've been here a couple of times, but all the times were because of work, so I didn't really get to know the city. So I'm starting at the Empire State Building. We are at the top, and the view is just amazing.
26-year-old Meza is from Mexico and says she will be living in New York City for the next several months. Meza has a software engineering degree and advocates awareness of gender-based violence. Sunday's Miss Universe pageant was broadcast live from Florida. Last year's ceremony was canceled due to the pandemic. Still to come, real estate heir Robert Durst's murder trial resumes in Los Angeles, though the prosecutor argues that this isn't the first killing Durst is responsible for. And officials from NASA report on the status of the James Webb Space Telescope. That spacecraft is designed to look even further back into space and time than the Hubble telescope. More on that here on NTD News.
We're becoming more and more urban. 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 We're becoming
we lose our connection with nature. This little girl lives in a world of natural beauty, nature all around her. Not everybody has this opportunity. Things are growing all around her, all sort of handmade things. The artist has portrayed a scene that is so comforting and so grounded that we can experience this ourselves. The artist himself has to be absolutely natural. And it's not easy to do because children are hard to paint. Birds are hard to paint. They don't sit still. This is quite an accomplishment, reflecting nature back to us. It's just a pure, natural painting.
Put the keys down, Kevin.
But I'm gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
My text to emoji ratio has gotten a little out of hand.
A little?
Yep, I'm definitely gonna call a ride home.
I felt accomplished after I got my diploma. Made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Multi-millionaire real estate heir Robert Durst's murder trial has resumed in Los Angeles after a 14th-month delay. Prosecutors say Durst's own testimony holds the key to the verdict. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
You all know who Robert Durst is.
A prosecutor in California says the words of multi-millionaire Robert Durst will help jurors convict him of murdering Susan Berman.
We know that whoever that killer was wanted Susan's body to be found. How do we know? Because the killer left a note, what's been commonly referred to as the cadaver note, and that was mailed to the Beverly Hills Police Department.
He's also a suspect in the 1982 disappearance of his wife, Kathleen.
And we're going to show that he did that with the motive and because she was a witness. And by witness, meaning that she assisted him in covering up the killing of his wife almost 20 years earlier.
Deputy District Attorney John Lewin told jurors Tuesday that some of the most damning testimony in the case will come from Durst's own statements made to police and documentary filmmakers.
This is what happens.
All right, this is the bad thing. There it is. You're caught.
This is not the first time Durst has been on trial for murder. He was acquitted in 2003 after confessing to killing his neighbor in Texas.
Finally, we're going to show that Robert Durst killed, dismembered, and dumped Morris Black's corpse, his body parts, in trash bags into Galveston Bay in September of 2001. So there's going to be 3 killings that we are going to prove.
Lawyers are presenting a new round of opening statements in Los Angeles County Superior Court. That's after a 14-month recess in the case, delayed because of the pandemic. Durst has pleaded not guilty to killing his best friend, Susan Berman, in 2000 at her Los Angeles home. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
One of the biggest things safety experts worry about on highways is drivers falling asleep behind the wheel. That's even easier to do when your car can drive itself. Police in Wisconsin pulled over an Illinois man near the border between the states after spotting him sleeping while his Tesla was on autopilot.
He was totally sleeping. Totally.
I'm keeping that block.
Perfect. You were sleeping. You were totally like this in the car. Why would we drive like that?
I was okay.
No, you were sleeping.
I was a little bit tired.
No, you were sleeping, sir. I was upside of you. I was looking at you when you were doing this. Your eyes were closed. So I understand you have autopilot, but if something was to happen, you're not able to make that conscious decision to stop in a hurry.
According to police, a deputy followed the vehicle for 2 miles with lights and sirens activated before the man realized he was being followed. The driver claimed he was on his way to work at the time. He was given a ticket for inattentive driving, and officers also discovered he had 2 prior incidents where drivers called police after seeing him sleeping behind the wheel last year. A video posted online appears to show a UFO sighting in California. We hear more from NTD's David Lamb.
An object in the shape of a Tic Tac can be seen hovering left and right in a video from Friday. At one point, the object seems to plunge into the water. Filmmaker Jeremy Corbell posted the video to his Twitter account. He says the U.S. Navy photographed and filmed the UFO 2019. According to Corbell's website, it was filmed at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Astronomer Seth Shostak analyzes the video.
Wasn't the kind of evidence that I would consider in any way compelling to show that, by gosh, the aliens are here and they're flying over the coast of California.
Shostak says videos like this have been taken all the time.
I would believe it if another camera also saw the same thing, right? And then you would try and interpret, well, what is it? I mean, is it an aircraft? Is it, a kite? Is it a drone? Whatever. That kind of thing would be convincing.
He says it'd be more compelling if there's satellite video capturing more angles of the spacecraft. But Corbell believes this incident is a breakthrough and mystery in that the Navy or Pentagon may or may not have more information. David Lamb, NTD News.
Supersonic jets are coming back in style. The European airliner Concorde operated one of only 2 supersonic jets commercially from 1969 to 2003. It was expensive, but now startup Boom Supersonic is working to pick up where the Concorde left off. They have released a demonstrator aircraft called the XB-1. It's a model for their future commercial airliner that Boom hopes will basically change time. With its fast speeds, Boom says a flight from New York to London would take just 3 hours and 15 minutes. The company is hoping to eventually charge just $100 for a 4-hour trip. Boom is planning to start building the first plane in 2023 and start flying it in 2026. Engineers are preparing for the James Webb Space Telescope for launch. The craft will serve as the next-generation Hubble telescope and is designed to peer farther into space than ever before. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The James Webb Space Telescope is preparing for its trip into space. It's set for launch on October 31st. In a virtual briefing Tuesday, officials from NASA and aerospace company Northrop Grumman discussed the significance of the launch and of deploying the spacecraft's mirror wing. That's a tool to help it better observe space.
Building a Swiss watch that's 40 feet tall and 80 feet long and 40 feet wide, right, and getting it ready for, this journey that we take it into vacuum and minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 times further than the moon, right, to deploy this mirror.
Webb is NASA's successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. It's designed to peer farther into space and further back in time than any other spacecraft before it. The telescope's launch has faced countless delays. It was originally supposed to fly more than a decade ago. Last July, officials delayed the launch to October 2021 due to the pandemic and technical issues.
Webb's giant mirror and infrared coverage will let scientists probe atmospheres of exoplanets to look for water, carbon dioxide, methane, and other compounds that could indicate habitability. In other words, exploring the atmospheres of worlds that could host life.
Webb will be shipped from California to the launch site in French Guiana in late August. Webb is destined for a point located 1 million miles from Earth, well beyond astronauts' reach. The orbiting Hubble telescope was repeatedly serviced by shuttle astronauts following its 1990 launch. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
As we get closer to the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games, international pressure to boycott the Games is picking up. That's over China's human rights abuses. A study has found that Beijing has a massive social media influence. The Chinese regime has over 170 state media accounts on Twitter and Facebook, and there are over 270 accounts by Chinese diplomats. Stay tuned to find out more. It's rare to find Republicans and Democrats agreeing on much in D.C., but there is one thing bringing both parties together: condemning the CCP for its ongoing human rights abuses. NTD's Steve Lance has more from the Capitol.
Republicans and Democrats are in lockstep calling out human rights abuses and genocide in China. They held a bipartisan hearing to examine the implication of holding the Winter Olympics in the communist country. They called on the International Olympic Committee to reassess its relationship with Beijing.
Xi Jinping and the CCP are persecuting believers and all manifestations of faith and spirituality, including Christians, Tibetan Buddhists, and Falun Gong practitioners, in ways not seen since the Cultural Revolution.
Democrats and Republicans alike said we can no longer turn a blind eye to Beijing's disgraceful human rights record in the face of profits.
I've said if we don't speak out against human rights violations in China for commercial reasons, we lose all moral authority to speak out for human rights anywhere.
The International Olympic Committee is no stranger when it comes to dealing with Beijing. In 2008, in spite of widespread calls to boycott the Beijing Olympic Games, they carried on business as usual.
The International Olympic Committee's shameful choice to hold the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing and other cities in China sadly makes the Olympics an immediate focal point for our consideration. How did it come to this moment where an event designed to uplift the human spirit is being held in a nation that is crushing the human spirit?
Human rights activist Young-Jin Lee says the international community is at risk of becoming a tool in the CCP's soft power strategy.
I'm calling on the U.S. and its allies to do the following: initiate a joint political boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, urging businesses and athletes not to participate in the Games.
Democrat Congressman from Massachusetts, James McGovern, thinks this is a necessary approach.
An announcement to postpone the 2020 Tokyo Games was made only 4 months before it was scheduled to start. If we can postpone an Olympics by a year for a pandemic, we can surely postpone an Olympics for a year for a genocide.
Voices around the world are calling to boycott the 2022 Beijing Winter Games. But is the International Olympic Committee listening? In the wake of the CCP virus pandemic, many eyes are certainly watching how they respond. Steve Lance, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
As part of the strategy to tell China's narrative, Beijing has significantly expanded its public diplomacy efforts. A recent study found that the Chinese regime has over 170 state media accounts on Twitter and Facebook. There are also over 270 accounts by Chinese diplomats. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
The CCP boasts a massive social media presence in the West. A recent study found that in just 9 months, Chinese diplomats posted over 200,000 times on Twitter and over 34,000 times on Facebook. Chinese state-run media posted over 700,000 times during the same period. Oxford University's Internet Institute and the Associated Press conducted the study. They found that Beijing is using this presence to shape public discourse. The study brought to light that the Chinese regime has over 170 state media accounts on Twitter and Facebook. There are also over 270 accounts by Chinese diplomats, though many of them aren't labeled correctly. Less than 15% of them have their diplomatic and regime ties clearly labeled. On Twitter, Chinese diplomats often post images mocking other countries, boast how efficient Chinese vaccines are, and claim that Taiwan is part of communist China, and that there is no genocide in Xinjiang. Other users amplify their messages by retweeting them. The study found that Chinese diplomats' posts get retweeted an average of 100,000 times per month. But they also found that nearly half of these retweets come from fake user accounts. In light of the findings, the study said the Chinese regime has significantly expanded its public diplomacy efforts in order to boost its reputation in global affairs and current events. New data shows that the U.S. is importing a lot less goods from China as a result of tariffs. That's compared to data from before the pandemic. And the types of goods the U.S. is buying from China have also changed significantly. The U.S. is now buying telecom gear, furniture, clothes, and so on from other countries. Vietnam is benefiting a lot from the shift. It is now America's 6th biggest importer, moving up from number 12 in 2018. U.S. tariffs hit Chinese telecom equipment and computer accessories the hardest. A Wall Street Journal analysis shows that imports of these two products dropped by about $15 billion from their peak in 2018. Despite all this, China remains the U.S.'s top importer, and imports of non-tariffed items from China grew in recent months. This despite a global decline in trade due to the pandemic. Lead economist for Oxford Economics, Adam Slater, says the effects of the pandemic are starting to wear off, but the longer-term impact of the trade war remains. The trade war pressed Beijing to impose tit-for-tat tariffs. Although U.S. companies usually bear the costs, Chinese factories may also lose their business to rival factories in countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Mexico. The trade war also dealt a heavy blow to Beijing's ambitions to lead in advanced manufacturing technology, such as semiconductors and electric vehicles.
Next up, Swedish furniture retail giant Ikea recycles products in an effort to go green. A retail location at a Swedish mall is attracting thrifty customers and collectors. More on that in just a moment.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate co-pays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month.
I called to get dental, transportation, meals, and the Give Back benefit.
With this virus situation, I called to get everything I'm entitled to. I couldn't believe I was missing out on so many benefits.
With the uncertainty of the virus, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
The Indian Navy is still searching for 75 people. They went missing after a barge sunk off the coast of Mumbai on Monday amid Cyclone Tauktae. The barge was operated by the Indian Oil and Natural Gas Corporation and was carrying a crew of 261 people. The Indian Navy has so far been able to rescue 186, but the search continues for the remaining crew members. Since Monday, the Indian Navy and Coast Guard have mounted extensive operations in the Arabian Sea to ensure the safety of personnel on all vessels located in the cyclone's path. Spain faces a humanitarian and diplomatic crisis after thousands of Moroccans swim to reach EU soil. The arrival of the migrants in North Africa comes amid a row between Morocco and Spain.
Spain has deployed troops to Ceuta to patrol the border with Morocco after thousands of migrants swam into the North African enclave city. This comes amid heightened diplomatic tensions between Spain and Morocco. Local TV footage shows soldiers in armored vehicles guarding the enclave's beach as dozens of migrants emerge from the water while hundreds more stand on the Moroccan side of the fence between the enclave and Morocco. Spain's Interior Minister says at least 6,000 Moroccans swam into Ceuta on Monday and Tuesday. Authorities are transferring the adult arrivals to a local football stadium to be deported back to Morocco. Ceuta police sent back 2,700 migrants to Morocco. At least one person died during the crossing. Ceuta has a population of 80,000 and is located on the northern tip of Morocco across from Gibraltar. Ceuta has long been a magnet for African migrants trying to reach Europe. It's separated from Morocco by a double-wide 10-meter-high fence. The arrival of the migrants takes place at the time of increased diplomatic tension between Spain and Morocco. It's about the leader of a militant group who is in hospital in Spain. Spain said on Monday that Brahim Ghali was accepted into Spain on humanitarian grounds. Ghali's Polisario Front fights for the independence of Western Sahara. The US in December recognized Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara. Morocco deplores Spain's decision to admit Ghali, saying it will have repercussions for bilateral relations. Ceuta's president links the sudden migrant influx to Morocco's relaxed control of the border. The Spanish government officially rejects the notion that Morocco is punishing Spain for a humanitarian move. Spain's prime minister said on Tuesday he would visit Ceuta and pledged to secure the border.
Watching a movie at home is convenient, but the excitement of seeing a film on a big screen is back. UK cinemas reopened this week with limited seats and virus safety measures in place. NTD's Neil Woodrow is at the movies.
Watching the latest movie release with popcorn, hot dogs among a large group is back. Across England, Wales and parts of Scotland, indoor entertainment venues are welcoming audiences after several months of closure. Londoner Sam Pock was anticipating the thrill of the big screen as he waited on Monday to enter a cinema in Leicester Square.
Yeah, I've missed it a lot. It's just the whole experience of just going out, just sitting down in a big screen, and yeah, just the whole feeling of being in a cinema is just something I've missed for the past year, so I can't wait to go inside and watch a film. Cinema has been missed.
Oh, I just feel relieved. Relieved that we're getting back to normal culture again.
Thoughts about the pandemic are on this gentleman's mind.
I mean, I haven't had a vaccine yet, so I'm not super confident about myself, but it's been long enough. We've got the masks, we've got the sanitizer. I think people can start making their own decisions now, and I hope and I trust that, you know, a place like this will do everything they can to keep people safe.
Tim Richards, founder and CEO of cinema chain View International, said the business was seeing bookings at levels slightly above a normal pre-COVID market. He said it's very exciting.
We have this situation now where we're going to be having almost 3 years of movies in the next 12 to 18 months. So we're looking at this extraordinary period where I genuinely believe we're going to be looking at the second golden age of cinema.
Cinemas are counting on highly anticipated films like the latest James Bond, No Time to Die, and Marvel's Black Widow to entice audiences. Both were pushed back from 2020.
Last year, cinemas were able to open for a few months, and to be honest, the lack of availability of big films meant that it was always a slightly half-hearted affair. This time, I think absolutely there's an expectation that this is it, and that cinema audiences will want to come back and enjoy the big screen with their friends and with their family.
Film critic Kalim Aftab says it might be some time before the film studios feel confident with cinema-only releases.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be completely there until after the summer. I think when we're looking beyond and we see films like the James Bond that's scheduled to come out in end of September, early October, that's when we're really going to see the billion-dollar movies back.
Seats are still available for the latest releases, so if you're going to the cinema, enjoy the movie. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Leicester Square, London.
Despite the relaxation of rules for hospitality in the UK this week, many people haven't been persuaded back into shops. Footfall counts from during the day on Monday show fewer shoppers compared to the same time last week. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with the story.
We've regained freedoms with restrictions easing, but recent data suggests that many people haven't returned to shopping. Footfall across retail destinations declined by 3% before 5 p.m. on Monday, compared to the previous week. It did rise by 4% in the evening, though. Heavy rain showers could have put people off during the day, but it's still down by more than a third compared to this time in 2019. Retail parks had the biggest drop in numbers. Across much of the UK, pubs and restaurants have reopened, but central London hasn't seen a return of as many shoppers. Regional cities showed an increase in people out and about by Monday evening, up 22%. Overall, though, there are fewer people. However, there are signs that people will return. Analysts say more people have started to shop for groceries in person. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
A small city in southern Sweden is adopting different ways of going green. Recently, one of the world's largest furniture retailers stepped up to help. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
This mall in Sweden is not your average shopping center. It's home to a recycling center and features shops that only sell second-hand goods. Most come from donations. It opened in 2015, and now you can even find Ikea's famous blue and yellow logo there. Opened less than 6 months ago, this Ikea store is also unique. The location only sells refurbished Ikea products, already assembled.
The goal is really to learn about how we can take back our own furniture, make them ready for a next life, and then again find the next customer who can continue loving it.
Initially, the store relied on goods from the city's recycling plant, next door to the shopping mall. But soon, the home furniture store had enough demand to start bringing in goods from further away. Customers vary, from the thrifters to collectors, seeking pieces of furniture no longer available in most stores. The oldest item they've had dates back to the 1960s.
Ikea's ambition is to be climate positive in 2030, and to do so we need to learn a lot and we need to innovate a lot, and this is one great innovation lab for us to relearn how we can support the prolongation of our products.
A key component of the operation takes place in this back room. There, products are inspected, refurbished, and prepared for sale. Most pieces can be fixed with a deep clean and some polishing, but others need sanding and painting. The goal here isn't to open second-hand Ikea stores worldwide, but instead to integrate sustainability into the retailer's business model. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Up next, NTD visits the new studio of an artist who paints the American flag in all 50 states. He says it wasn't always easy being an artist who loves America. Find out more when we return. A Staten Island artist has spent his career painting the American flag. NTD's Jason Perry visited him in his new studio to learn more about his inspiration.
Scott Lebedo has painted the American flag in all 50 states. The flag you see behind me is painted on the doors of New York Fire Department Tin House. They lost 6 firemen when they responded to the attacks on 9/11. Lebedo says it hasn't been easy being an artist who loves America and supports the troops and first responders. He learned early on that parts of America's art community are a little different than what he once envisioned.
And I went to find myself in the art world in the 90s, which is New York City, Manhattan. It's the capital of the creative world, you know, and like, where do I find my niche? And unfortunately, I saw that there was so much hatred towards America and that flag, our American flag, from the art community. And I was shocked.
Lebedo says America has given him complete freedom as an artist, and everyone in America has that same freedom of expression under the Constitution. He says to enjoy these freedoms and show hatred towards the flag and the country is like biting the hand that feeds you.
You try drawing a circle in the wrong part of somewhere in the Middle East, you lose your hands. You know, so I'm a crazy son of a gun. You know, I've done some crazy things. I'm a crazy artist. But I can be that way because of that flag. And the men and women, which is more important, who made the ultimate sacrifice for me. They did this for me.
He says he wants to bring the American flag back to life. The largest flag Lebedo's painted is in Houston, Texas, next to the Hobby Airport, and it is over 150,000 square feet. But there is still more in his artworks. He says he also hopes to reach the youth.
You know, we all know the flag, you know, we did the Pledge of Allegiance in school, whatever, I'm gonna go out and play. But when you see something so visually stimulating, especially with children nowadays, with everything's computerized, CGI, technology, but this grabs them and they ask questions. What is that? Why is that work of art? Why is that flag like that? And then that folks can say, well, that building, that's a veterans post, and that giant flag on there is paying tribute to them. Well, who are the veterans, Dad? They're the ones who allow us to go to the Yankee game tonight.
Lebedo started an art installation tour to raise awareness of the veterans who commit suicide, roughly 22 every day. When Scott found out that I am also a veteran, he showed me the utmost respect.
Look, you were given a gun and a bayonet. God gave me a paintbrush and some paint. You know, I will never compare myself to the sacrifice that you made. That's part of also what I do for the veterans, because there's a little guilt, again, for why I'm living the life I want because of you guys, because of you men and women.
Lebedo's gratefulness towards the men and women who serve is seen throughout the states, flowing into the art that he creates. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
Sometimes staying healthy can seem like a chore, but even small changes can have a big impact. Let's look at 6 simple ways to stay on top of your game.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. There is no better way to foster a healthy gut ecosystem than to eat a salad a day. Use a variety of different vegetables and herbs. Think of your body as your family and your gut microbes as your children. The health of those kids will completely dictate the health and success of the home. Salads promote a diverse and beneficial ecosystem. Water is wonderful, and chances are you should be drinking more of it. Let's take it one step further though. Cranberries reduce inflammation and keep our kidneys running at peak performance. Lemon juice is said to help clean the liver, and lemons are known to help with digestion and pH balance. Try making cranberry lemonade with stevia, organic cranberry juice, and lemons. The toxins you breathe in on a daily basis are not inconsequential. Perfumes, air fresheners, that new car smell, and fragrances in the body have been proven to be highly toxic to the body. Open your windows whenever possible. Don't trap yourself in areas that do not have fresh air circulating, and use non-toxic cleaners. Us humans were meant to walk, jog, and sprint on a daily basis. We should be walking, squatting, and running sporadically all day. If running or jogging isn't something you can do yet, try walking. Take the stairs and park farther away. Walk and jog and sprint every chance you get. Have you read the studies about this? Nature is so important for our health. Go outside in nature. We need it and we do not get enough of it. If you are near the woods, take a daily walk. Breathe in the nature around you. Do some grounding by walking barefoot or sit on a rock and meditate. Whatever you do, just get out there and get some negative ions. Speaking of breathing, this is not a small thing. One can radically improve their health and their mental well-being immediately by eliminating shallow breathing and learning to naturally take deep, full breaths. If you lie down on the floor and breathe in, does your stomach rise or fall? If it's sinking in as you take a breath, then your breathing is all wrong. There are plenty of good videos on YouTube that teach you how to breathe properly.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.